As listeners, we know that string quartets have different sounds and different personalities. And I just want to try something, first of all, on you, Marc.
You're not going to get very far.
Well, I think I might, because, you know... anyway, let's listen. When you gave your last concert for the Chamber Music Society of New York, of Lincoln Center in New York, the New York Times did a review, and it described your sound there as, and I quote, a rich, warm sound with a firm bass, he's got to agree with that, a firm bass and a velvety top, polished and seductive. Now, that was your final concert. Is that about right for the sound of the Vermeer?
I suppose that it's pretty close, but he does ignore the middle, and the middle of a string quartet is a very important part.
Yes.
So it's possible that my playing is sometimes firm, and it certainly is possible that Shmuel's playing is very sensual. But as with any string quartet, the middle of the quartet is sort of where the quartet lives and dies. You get a good cellist and a good violinist together, and they will sound rather well together. Their voices are quite far apart, and it's the glue in the middle that actually gives the quartet the sound.
I agree. It's the sum of the parts. There's no question about that. But what is that sum? Were you aiming for a particular sound?
Well, we were aiming for a different sound virtually from phrase to phrase. I mean, it's absolutely one of our only laws in the quartet is that we let the phrase dictate the sound. We let the composer dictate the sound, and we don't dictate to the composer how he should sound.
So you would produce a different sound in Haydn than you would in Szymanowski?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
With no question whatsoever.
And Jerzy, Penderecki and Mozart, different sound, right?
Oh, totally. I would 100% agree that to find for each group the association with a certain composer, a certain period in music, and finding the own sound for that very composer. It's what we spending all days rehearsing. That's what we do. So
both quartets have had long residences at universities. Now, is that really crucial for the existence of a string quartet in North America these days?
Well, I think I'm not sure how it is exactly that the university and colleges and conservatories became the home of the string quartet, but they did, and certainly one effect that it has is if part of your income is a salary drawn from an institution like that, you're protected somewhat from the vicissitudes of the touring career, and so if you have a bad touring year, you still have an income coming from at least one of your jobs has a stable income attached to it, and I think that it's very difficult these days for a string quartet to survive just on playing concerts. Almost every, even the quartets who don't have a full-time association with a learning institution of some sort have at least relationships that are sort of adjacent to their careers with such institutions.
Mm-hmm. The mother of one string quartet player was here last week, and she was telling me that her daughter has left a certain fairly well-known string quartet, certainly a named string quartet, and left behind an income of $9,000 a year. She's now earning $90,000 a year in an orchestra. And this was after many years in a string quartet. Jerzy, what's your relationship with Wilfrid Laurier as a string quartet?
The quartet is called the Quartet in Residence, and we at Wilfrid Laurier University, and we teach there. We teach the studios, we teach the chamber music. We actually run the whole string department together with our former cellist Paul Pulford. He's the only other string teacher in our school, so we're actually responsible for the whole string program. So it's a big responsibility, and the residencies vary from quartet to quartet, from school to school, and in our case, we get very busy. And during the season, to keep the two careers going, it's actually quite challenging. The good thing is that in Canada, we only have 12 weeks terms, so it's actually not too bad. because after 24 weeks, you know, we can focus more on touring, and during those 12 weeks terms, we usually don't travel extensively. We might go away for 10 days at the most, because when we come back, we need to make up the lessons, and you know, there's lots of responsibilities. The students have to have their teachers in place, and but on the other hand, Laurier provided us also with the home in terms of place to be, place to travel from, place to rehearse. We have great support all around, and that has been really an amazing for
now, playing in a string quartet is being compared to being married. Is this an analogy you like?
Well, no, frankly. One difference between a marriage and a string quartet is that in forming a string quartet, you know the exact reason why you're taking on this relationship. You have the great string quartet repertoire, and most people have no idea why they got married. And maybe they think they did at the time, but in retrospect, perhaps they still think they had no idea why they got married. So I've been married happily for 38 years, and so I'm not unfamiliar with the fact of being married, but string quartets, it of course is a more complicated relationship, because in a group of 4 people there are 6 one-to-one relationships, if you think about it.
Yes.
And so there are an awful lot more things that can go wrong among 4 people than between 2. But other than that, I don't think, I mean, we have a professional relationship, which is very different from the kind of personal relationship that I have in my marriage with my wife. When the first time I went on tour with the Vermeer Quartet, they'd been playing 3 seasons already. And we arrived in Ottawa, checked into the hotel. We had a little bit of time to get some dinner before going to the concert hall. I went to my room, unpacked, came down to the restaurant in the hotel, and in one corner was one of my colleagues, in another corner was the other one of my colleagues, and in the third corner the third one, and I didn't know what to do. We had never discussed this, but they had arrived at the point where they didn't eat together. And in fact, we basically didn't travel together, didn't stay together. We agreed where to meet. We came to rehearse in the hall. We came to, I mean, we were very dependable about our obligations to each other and to the business. But we did not spend time together outside the quartet. Now that I'm not playing quartets, I'm quite good friends with my colleagues. But before that, it really is we had a cordial relationship in the best of times, but it was a business relationship.
Yeah, I was going to say that the Amadeus Quartet had a reputation for having a similar sort of relationship, and there were.
Well, yeah, I mean, we learned from them. We talked to our older colleagues about, you know, how to go about being a string quartet, and we talked to the then remaining members of the Budapest Quartet and to the Amadeus guys, and this was some of the advice that we got from them. As you
Interesting.
know.
Jerzy, can I ask you, is it important to be buddies and friends to make music together?
I don't think that it's important that is a must to have this kind of relationship, but in our group we actually did not have this kind of people to give us advice, and we travel together. We actually sometimes stay in a hotel and we're next to each other, and we don't get upset with that, even though when we check in we always ask, can you put us in different parts of the hotel, and usually the person who checks us in is like, excuse me? It's like, they just can't always believe that we actually, you know, we work together and we don't want to be next to each other in a hotel. But it is a very complex relationship, and over the years, I mean, there's time that there are times that we travel together and we spend time, social time together. But there's also time when we need to be apart, when we need to take our own space and just have that extra privacy.